Missing Mass is not light matter. This is grave matter. It's divine precept based on the third commandment to keep holy the Sabbath. So you ask, is missing Mass a mortal sin? Great question. And it's one that comes up a lot because the amount of people going to Mass on Sundays is in many places dramatically lower than what you would expect vis-a-vis the number of Catholics who live in that particular neighborhood or parish or area. So, remarkably, even non-Catholics know that Catholics have to go to Mass on Sunday. So that should give you a little bit of a hint of an answer: is missing Mass a mortal sin? Let's back up, because before we get to the answer itself, let me explain a few terms. The first is that Catholics are obliged, to attend Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation. In the United States, for instance, there are typically 6 holy days of obligation, and they usually include solemnities like Christmas and Easter, Assumption, Immaculate Conception, All Saints' Day, for instance. These are days where Catholics have to go to Mass outside of Sunday. Now, Easter Sunday is always on a Sunday, so you're covered there. Now, one could go to Mass. You could go to Mass on Saturday night, the anticipated Mass, or you could go on Sunday, all day Sunday. So if you noticed, Sunday begins after 4 o'clock on Saturday night, the night before. Typically, this is a traveler's Mass. This used to be called in many cities the cook's Mass. Cooks, as in people who make food, because it was the Mass for people who couldn't go to Mass on Sunday because they had to work at restaurants. So a lot of times people would go to Mass at 5 p.m. Now remember, this is back in the day when the fast was from midnight or from 3 hours before receiving communion. Now it's only just down to an hour. So one can go to Mass on Saturday night or Sunday, plus the holy days of obligation. That's when we're supposed to be going to Mass. And as I said, many of my non-Catholic friends, in fact, practically all of my non-Catholic friends know that. In fact, they know I'm pretty hard to reach on Sundays because I'm usually busy saying Mass somewhere. And on a Sunday, I could be saying Mass in any number of parishes in the area where I live. So then the question would be is missing Sunday Mass a mortal sin? Missing Sunday Mass is grave matter, but it might not be a mortal sin. Now you might say, whoa, wait a minute. I thought you just said it's a mortal sin. I didn't say it was a mortal sin. It's always grave matter. Let me explain. In order to commit a mortal sin, you need 3 things. You need grave matter, so it has to be something serious, which missing Mass would be ordinarily. You have to have intent and sufficient reflection. So in other words, it was wrong, seriously wrong. You knew it and you did it anyway. Now, let's say you're on your way to Mass. You're driving to Mass, and on the side of the road, you encounter a person in distress. You pull over to assist them, and you call the police, and you stay with the person in distress. And it takes a while for everything to be resolved. Let's say the police and the ambulance get there immediately, but you have to stick around to answer questions and be a witness to what you saw. And by the time that all wraps up, you have missed Mass. And in your particular place, you cannot get to Mass easily or conveniently in any other way, right? It's very far away. Now, did you miss Mass? Yes, you did. But would I say you incurred a mortal sin? I would say no, because you weren't intending to miss Mass, and nor were you premeditatively thinking, boy, I really hope I run into a motorist on the side of the road so that I can help them. No, this is a circumstance that you encountered, and your natural sense of justice and charity or love for your neighbor compelled you to pull over and assist them, and in the process you missed Mass. So is it grave matter? Yes. But whether or not one commits a mortal sin, well, in this particular case, I would say no. You failed to reach 2 of the 3 different standards necessary to commit a mortal sin. Now, that's very different, I'm sure you can see, than the person who just blows it off, doesn't want to get out of bed, has no interest in going to Mass on a Sunday or Saturday night, even though they might live in a place, especially in places in suburban and urban areas where Masses can be offered as late as 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. on Sunday night, sometimes even 8 p.m., and on college campuses, sometimes even 10 p.m. I've seen Masses offered that late. So there's no way that they can justifiably say that they couldn't make it. Like there was just no opportunity there. Now, this also, of course, raises a question about people who have to work on Sundays, right? And sometimes they have to miss Mass. Again, if their intent is not to miss Mass, but because of the nature of their work, they're forced to miss Mass. Again, missing Mass is always grave matter, but whether or not they were intending to, or they were compelled by some other serious reason to, or that they premeditatively just said, you know what, I'm going to sign up to work on a certain day precisely so that I can miss Mass. Obviously, they're missing the same standards as the person who's helping the person with the motorist example, as I used earlier on in this episode. Before we continue, I'd like to invite you to collaborate with our mission here at St. Patrick's Seminary, where we're invested in the formation of future priests, which, as you know, is crucial to the evangelization of the world, the celebration of the sacraments, and the promotion of the church that Christ founded. If you'd like to make a contribution, please do so in the link below. And again, we thank you in advance for your collaboration with us in this all-important ministry. So, in order to arrive at a mortal sin, you need to have grave matter, which missing Mass is de facto, sufficient reflection, and intent of the will. So you can see that it's possible that someone could miss Mass, but without the other two factors involved, are not committing a mortal sin. Now, let me go back to the person who just struggles to make it to Mass on Sunday. They think, well, we have sports or we have other commitments. That is not as serious as work. Like going to work and holding down a position that pays your rent and puts food on the table is a very different matter than just simply blowing off Mass because, well, we have other commitments that are more important. And the way I like to think of it is like this. There are 168 hours of the week, and Mass is typically 1 hour. If you took 1 and divided it by 168, you'd get 0.0059. So that's all God is asking for, is 6/1000ths of your week. I mean, that's really not much at all to ask. If God were asking for a tithe of 10%, that'd be nearly 17 hours a week. He's not asking for 17 hours. He's asking for 0.0059 of your week. And so when people tell me that they're too busy for Mass, I say, are you too busy at 0.0059 of your week to even come for an hour to say thank you and to express your gratitude to God? Well, then they'll say, Father, but I can do that from my living room, or I can watch Mass on TV. Well, sure, you can express your gratitude anywhere, but can you receive Holy Communion? Can you be in solidarity with your other believers who in part depend on you? And we all depend on one another in order to be a believing community of faith, to sustain one another as a community, to know that we're all in this together. And as much as we may struggle with our discipleship and our walk with the Lord, we still come together as a community because that's how we're wired. We need communion, not only Holy Communion in receiving Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, but communion with one another. And this, of course, flies in the face of our hyper-individualistic society, which really tries to avoid people at all costs in many sectors and doesn't want to have any communion. But this is not the way we were wired. This is not the way the Trinity is constructed, which is the primordial community of persons, hence the word communio or community or communion. These are all built into God and how we are made in His image and likeness. You might ask that if you missed Mass on Sunday and have committed a mortal sin, so you have grave matter, missing Mass, sufficient reflection, intent of the will, and you come back to Mass the following week or in subsequent weeks, do you need to go to confession prior to receiving Holy Communion? Yes, because you have to confess all mortal sins to a priest before receiving Holy Communion again. So missing Mass is not light matter. This is grave matter. It's divine precept based on the third commandment to keep holy the Sabbath. Now, for Catholics or Christians, that's either Saturday night or Sunday. For the Jews, it's Saturday. But nevertheless, it's still serious matter to miss Mass on Sunday. And to flippantly brush it off as if it's not that big of a deal does a great disservice to one's soul and one's spiritual walk. If you like this video and others we provide here at St. Patrick's, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, thanks and God bless.